Well, it's so good to see you all. I know, we have some folks watching in the other theaters, and we have been doing virtual and streaming things for like 2.5 years now. It is just so good to see your faces in person. So I hope you have had a great day at Star Trek. This is one of my favorite conferences to come to, and hopefully you have a relaxing evening. We have a fun movie coming up, but let's get to some stuff here. About Blazor, about cross-platform dev, about .NET MAUI and Angular and React and all the things together. Let's look at some possibilities. How about that? Okay. So my name is Sam Basu. I am a dev advocate at Progress Software. Hopefully some of you know us for the things we make to help developers be a little bit more successful. Telerik and Kendo UI and Fiddler and Sitefinity, all the things. That's me pretty much online anywhere, so you can get hold of me after this. GitHub, Skype, Twitter, all the things. So let's talk about all of these things. But first up, I do want to acknowledge that we're living through, we have lived through, hopefully, some fun times, and with the pandemic behind us. But there are parts of the world that are hurting a little bit. So I hope your friends and family are well, and you're trying to be as productive as we all can. All right, so I do have some slides, some pretty pictures which are not important, so I will try to breeze through them as fast as I can, maybe 10, 15 minutes. I could jump straight into code, but maybe not all of you have tinkered with some of the things that I'm going to show you, so I'm going to try to maybe set the stage for a little bit, 10, 15 minutes, and then I will try to show you as many things as I can. I will jump through a few technologies just to kind of show you the promise, and hopefully you walk away with something that you might be potentially looking to use at your work and for the apps that you build. So I'm going to focus on three primary things: mobile, desktop, and web, right? And how do those things come together in the .NET world? What's going on moving forward, and some of our options. And feel free to ask questions, and folks in 18 and 19, please fire away things on Slack. I would like to have a little time towards the end so we can do some Q&A. If you are building mobile apps today, and doesn't need to be mobile apps, building for mobile, could be websites, could be progressive web apps. You have a lot of choices. This is my 1-minute spiel. You can go native. You can go all things hybrid. You can go JavaScript native with things like NativeScript or React Native. But fundamentally, iOS, Android, and Windows are distinctly different platforms, and we're trying to cater to all of them. Hopefully you're building cross-platform solutions these days. If you are looking for compiled solutions, then you have some choices. You have had Xamarin and Xamarin.Forms for a long time. There is Uno platform, there is Flutter, there is .NET MAUI now. So lots of choices. There is no right or wrong here. It all depends on what do you like to maintain your code base in, and what else are you doing. So maybe you can code share a little better with things. Let's talk about .NET, because that's fundamentally what I'm talking about, but I will talk a little bit about JavaScript. These are slides that you may have seen from Microsoft. It is a new modern .NET for all the things. It is a unified dev stack. As we speak right now, we are on .NET 6, which came out last November. And .NET 7 is already cooking. We have had like 2 or 3 previews of that, so we are in a good place. .NET started getting a little fragmented, but now they have pulled it back together. So all of the best pieces about the .NET base class libraries, the BCLs, are all combined now. So Mono and parts of Unity and the Blazor runtimes, the MAUI runtimes, they're all together in .NET Core, and it's just called .NET, which is a good story. And the tools have gotten much, much better as well. Now, speaking of mobile and .NET, this is kind of where we started with what was called Xamarin iOS and Xamarin Android. We started writing some shared C#, but then we wrote the platform heads separately. And a lot of folks ask if this has gone away. No, it's actually now part of .NET. It's just called .NET for iOS and .NET for Android. All of the APIs are there. You're just building the UIs for each platform. And then came along Xamarin.Forms, which was probably about 7, 8 years back now, and it has been rather popular within a small group of developers who just love to do .NET and would rather take their apps cross-platform that way. This is fundamentally a little difficult because the shared UI code is an abstraction, and you're trying to not know much about iOS or Android and just write C# or XAML. So it's come a long way, but there are some pain points. This is the production reality right now. If any of you are writing stuff on this, don't worry. The last major Xamarin.Forms release was November of 2021, and they'll have 2 years of support. So 2023 that's until how long you have to move things over to what's next. And what's next is this little thing called .NET MAUI, which is an acronym for Multi-Platform App UI. And the P is silent because like MPAUI doesn't sound as nice as MAUI, so it's just MAUI. So what it is just essentially an evolution of Xamarin.Forms, but with some things done well. It is truly a single project, and in addition to mobile, which is granted for iOS and Android, and these are not the only things. We also have Tizen support. We have, other watch and devices support, but we have also added desktop, so which is a big deal because now it's Windows and Mac. They have not recreated the wheel to do this. For Windows, it's WinUI. That's how they're reaching Windows, WinUI 3. And for Mac, it's Mac Catalyst, which is Apple's way of taking your iPad apps and running it on Mac. So this does open it up quite a bit. And these are truly native apps that are cross-platform. We'll talk about device APIs that are nice. So all of the marketing spiel, which you kind of understand, but it's nice. The promise is nice. I will be honest, like I've been on this journey for like a year and a half. I remember the first preview of .NET MAUI was March of 2021. So we went through 14 previews, and now we're at release candidate, RC2. There is going to be likely one more, and then we hit GA, which is general availability, sometime this month. So the runtime, the framework is ready. Some of the tooling is catching up a little bit, especially on a Mac. Windows, you're fine, but things are getting ready. This is one of the big benefits of .NET MAUI, which we'll talk about, and this applies, even if you're doing Blazor or other JavaScript stuff, you have all of these native APIs readily accessible. And this is not the full list. There's like 40 or so APIs. So anything that you have on the devices, you can easily get to them. All right, now let's talk about desktop real quick. If you're like me and have seen a few better parts of your life go by, I'm old. So I like this. I have a lot of choice, but I also understand that this gets a little frustrating because we are sitting on like 25 years of Windows desktop development. So a lot of things have evolved. If you look at the top few, those are like classic straight up Windows stack, and you can still do that. Don't let anyone tell you that WinForms or WPF is dead, because it's not. They actually run just fine. .NET Framework is a part of Windows, so it's going to be there. It's in maintenance mode, security patches, because there is nothing more to do. Now all of the innovation is in .NET Core and .NET 6 and 7, but those things run just fine on .NET 6 and .NET 7. So you can start modernizing your apps a little bit. You can bring in little islands of modernness within your desktop applications. You can bring in MAUI, you can bring in .NET, or all of these native APIs. You can bring in some Blazor. So that's all good. If you want to do web, you have some options. Progressive web apps are fine. Electron is very popular. And then the last few options are the ones that are enabled by .NET MAUI and Blazor Hybrid, which we'll talk about. The Mac and the Linux stories are not all that difficult or different. Same. You got renderers across different platforms. You can do web. You can do native. A really good story on how we reach desktop. Let's talk about web. We have been building modern web applications for a long time. You can build it however you want. If you are on .NET, the ASP.NET stack, then this is kind of what you do. We have had ASP.NET all the way from WebForms to MVC and Razor Pages, and then Blazor came along. So it is still a very productive, modern web development platform. However, if you think of ASP.NET, MVC, and WebForms, those are largely server-side tech, and that doesn't scale very well on client-side apps. So that's where Blazor comes in, which really helps you out. So again, if you're doing ASP.NET, all the power to you. You can do mobile-friendly things. You can now embed things and put it on desktop. And then Blazor really changes the game a little bit. But a lot of you also do JavaScript, right? Angular, React, and Vue, and anything else. Because if in the last 10 years, if you had to build a modern web app, you likely chose JavaScript as your front end, right? Unless you were OK with some server-side stuff. So where does that investment go? It can actually move nicely forward. You can keep doing JavaScript on the web, and some of it can be brought back into mobile and desktop, which is nice. So how do we do that? So one of the easiest ways is making your website a PWA, a progressive web app, This is something Google started pushing. Microsoft is fully behind it. Apple is kind of grudgingly okay with it, but you understand what it is. It's a nice modern citizen on a mobile device. It has offline support. It can have people pinning your app to the home screen or to the taskbar. You can have service workers running in the background doing little JavaScript things to pull down data or do stuff. This is really, really good and powerful. If you wanted to reuse your web things on desktop. In fact, on the Microsoft Store, a large majority of their apps are PWAs, so it absolutely works. But there are some limitations that you should know. Then comes Electron, which was, again, and this is battle tested. This has been around for like 10 years now. If you look at some of the icons at the bottom, like some of the apps that we use every day are Electron apps. And it is absolutely battle tested. VS Code, Slack, and Figma, and what else? Like messengers, those are all Electron apps. And so it clearly works, but we're going to talk about a lot more of .NET MAUI and Blazor today, and you will see that .NET MAUI is doing things a little bit differently. Electron comes with two things kind of built in. There is Node.js, which is the runtime, that's NPM, and then there is a Chromium browser that they're shipping. So you get a nice, consistent canvas to build your apps on, which comes at a bit of a price. You have deep OS integrations on desktop, but if you're not careful, your app might start feeling a little bloated, right? So maybe on a modern OS, you don't need all of that drama. So that's kind of the lure of some of these new WebViews. Blazor came out 3-4 years back now, and it's been amazing because for the first time, .NET developers get to write C# front and back, nothing like it. So you can do Blazor server-side, of course, with a little signal bridge that maintains your shadow DOM and lets you run your app as you would with ASP.NET. But you can also compile it down to WebAssembly and throw it entirely client-side. Blazor is actually particularly well suited for bringing it over to mobile and desktop because it will happily do a PWA. You can happily put it inside of an Electron shell, and then with .NET MAUI, we are doing things a little differently through a web view. And the big benefit here is Blazor and .NET MAUI have the exact same runtime. That's .NET 6 and .NET 7 moving forward. So when your web and your native stack run on the same runtime, that gives you some advantages, right? So code sharing and native API access is very, very easy. And that's exactly what the promise is with like Blazor Hybrid. This is, again, a marketing slide, but you can see all the places that Blazor can now run as a complete native app, which is really nice. Now, I put in this just to kind of, talk about the modernization angle a little bit. .NET 6, when it came out, it had the LTS badge, long-time support badge. So a lot of enterprises, are thinking about moving things forward. Every 3 to 4 years, you have a .NET that has the LTS badge. So if you're doing any of the things on the left, maybe .NET MAUI and Blazor can help you move to the new world a little bit. And you have to watch out or watch your ROI a little bit because you can't just like throw away apps. So maybe you can start modernizing little pieces of your app at a time, right? So everything is welcome. If you're doing WinForms or WPF or UWP or doing web apps with Angular, React, they're all welcome. And the web API part of it is actually really nice. A lot of folks run .NET as a backend. And if you do have a web API project, you really should consider moving to .NET 6, because just like that, without any code changes, you gain performance. And then if you have a newer greenfield project that you're starting up, then there's a new thing called minimal APIs, which is really a kind of a lightweight way of getting started with APIs. So there is some help here. Okay, and just a couple of things here. Like, we are here to help, which all of the .NET tools we make, and we make JavaScript tools. So that's all the stuff. And exactly 15 minutes, look at that. I'm done. Okay, no, I'm not done. This is where the failing demos begin. But any questions from the room here at this point? Okay, you're all awake? No, we're good. All right, let's look at code. Okay, so let's see, where do we begin? Let's start with PWAs actually. One of the best things, if you are looking into PWAs, is this thing called the PWA Builder. This is a thing a tool that Microsoft started. Now, the community steps in to help. I am tethering off my phone, so it's not the fastest connection here. But this thing is really nice. You can give it any website, even if it's not a PWA, and it's going to look through your configuration and say, oh, these are the things you need to do to make it a PWA. Here's a manifest file you can throw in. Give it some icons. Here are some service workers that you should add. So this is a good starting place to make your website a nice PWA. And there is no limit to this. You can keep on working on it so that it's a really, really good citizen on mobile or desktop. For an example, I can show you, let's see. I can actually show you some live PWAs that we have. I'm not trying to sell you on our controls. I'm just trying to show you an example here. So if I look at our Blazor stuff, we make components for all of these things here. But if I go into the demos, here are some demo apps here. This one, for example, is a finance application. So this is what a PWA looks like. This is done entirely with Blazor, and you can see the things at the bottom here. It's saying, hey, do you want to install this app? There's a thing up here that says, hey, do you want to install this app, right? So that is a PWA. And again, it is responsive, and it's going to work nicely on mobile devices, but you have to be careful of how much of the upfront cost you're paying to get your app up and running before you support like offline mode. But PWAs, there is nothing more to talk about. It is a website, but it works nicely on mobile or desktop. Okay, let's talk about Electron really quickly, because that is again a thing you can do, and it clearly works. So let me. I'm on a Mac. I will show you Windows as well. This is VS 2022. On a Mac, which is it is actually on RC, and it's about to hit production readiness in a couple of weeks. So let's bump up the fonts a little bit. Let me know if you can see it, or if I should make things any bigger. Okay, so this is a classic Blazor application. Nothing in it other than file, new project, Blazor. I think this is server side. So the only thing I'm adding here, you can see it's running on .NET 6 here. The only thing I'm adding here is one NuGet package, that's Electron.net. That one thing lets me transform my Blazor application into a mobile or a desktop app, mostly desktop, because Electron is really for desktop. But what it does is, if I come into program.cs here on the generic host builder, I'm saying, hey, use Electron, so I know what I'm doing. And on startup, I am actually configuring all the things that Blazor does. And then somewhere here, we are newing up a new browser window, and we are giving it some dimensions. And essentially, once you do this, there is a manifest file that essentially says, hey, if you're running on localhost, you can still run this as a web app, but that browser window knows how to publish that localhost and just point you to that without any of the browser Chrome. So I can actually go to that. Let's go here, and let's see, projects, and let's do this app, and that's the app. So let's open up terminal here. I'm going to bump it up and go .NET, Electron-I start. So at this point, we are asking Electron to bootstrap itself. And you're going to see NPM, but it's not going to download anything because it already has it, hopefully. So that's the NPM thing, and it's going to do an NPM start and get all the things, launch localhost at a certain port, and out comes a desktop application, right? This is native on a Mac. But if you have done any Blazor, this looks exactly like the Blazor application, because it is. It's essentially just taking the Blazor app, running it in localhost, but within a little shell. So everything here works. So this might be your easiest way to just take a Blazor app and just like put it on desktop. But like I said, you do get deep integrations. On an OS level, you can have things on the dock. You can tap into other processes. But you're paying a little bit of a price here, because this is a Node.js application. So maybe this is what you want to start with. But also, I would encourage you to look at the other things that I'm going to show you. And those are with the WebViews. Okay, and one other thing I wanted to point to before we go to all the WebView stuff. This is experimental, so may not be something that comes to fruition right away, but I mean, this is kind of where things started, like 2 to 3 years back, when there was a desire to put Blazor on mobile or desktop. This is kind of where things started. It's called mobile Blazor bindings, right? So what does that exactly do? So let's close this. Okay, Slack question while this is loading up. Yes?
Are there any limitations for supported mobile versions? For
Yeah, so the question is, are there limitations on the OS versions of the mobile devices? I'll have to double check on the docs, but I think it's like 7 forward, and for iOS it's also like 10 forward. But I mean, it's a decent amount of going back. I mean, it's on the docs, and we can check in just a minute. But yeah, great question. Okay, so this thing that I'm showing you, and again, I'm not saying you try this out, I'm just showing you that this is where it began, and I'll show you how it has evolved. So this one here brings in one NuGet package. This project is actually a Xamarin.Forms project. So they just strapped on 4 platforms onto this: iOS, Android, Windows, and Mac. The Windows is essentially a WPF app. The Mac is still kind of a shell. And they're using Blazor. So they're using the Razor syntax, but not exactly Blazor, right? So this may not be for everyone. So this app starts out, if you look at the imports, it's doing the usual Xamarin stuff, and then app.cs comes in. It is launching itself as a Blazor application, adding a component called Hello World. So what are we trying to pull back? So this is one of my favorite APIs to hit. It's called JSON placeholder. Just a nice set of APIs to RESTful APIs to try around. If you go to like posts or comments, they just give you like JSON back. This one here is the one that we're hitting. So that's the URL. It just gives you some data back in like JSON, and it's actually in Latin, which makes it fun. So that's the endpoint we are hitting, right? So here is my class that mimics what I have coming down from the cloud or my RESTful API. Here's the constants file, so I'm essentially pointing to that URL. And I have some HTTP clients here that know how to go do a fetch, and it's essentially doing a get. So we are still doing an HTTP get to get all the data down. But here's where things get interesting. This is a Razor file, so pure Blazor stuff, but it doesn't look like Blazor, essentially, because this looks like what is called XAML, Extensible Application Markup Language. And again, I'm going to show my age, because I like XAML, but I get it, not many people like XAML. It does get verbose. So here, we are rendering just a label, and we are rendering just one text box property of it. And here's the Hello World Razor. Now, this is a Blazor component. In here is some native stuff here, that label, that button, that is native in Xamarin.Forms. And then this part kind of looks like Blazor, because we are iterating over the list of things we get back and trying to render that. So let's quickly run this thing. And I am on a Mac, so the build host knows to go talk to Xcode, come back with an app package, and find the iOS simulator, and launch your app. Up comes iPhone 13 Pro. It's a cold start, so it's going to be just a couple more seconds. But essentially, what we are doing here is like any of this like code stuff. This is essentially the Blazor server-side things, quote unquote, the code behind. This is where we can do things that are not purely on the visual tree. So let's go back here, and it's launching. So essentially, we're going to hit that RESTful endpoint and try to come back with a list of things that we want to show on our mobile app, and give it one more second, and then there it goes. So this is essentially a list view, but it's rendered through Blazor-like syntax, right? It's a list view. And this is a modern, or this is a native app, so I can do things like the flipping thing, which is actually flipping the text box. You cannot do that from Blazor. So this is absolutely a native app, right? So what's wrong with this? There is nothing. I mean, and this might eventually become, oops, I didn't want to start that up again. Nope, go to sleep. So the problem with this is there's a lot of syntax here which is XAML. And this may not be something you want to do. Because if you're just doing Blazor, or if you're doing any of the web stuff, this looks a little clunky, and maybe it's not what you want to do. But it's an option, right? And this is kind of where it started. It is still experimental. Maybe someday, in the next iterations of .NET MAUI, you will see this coming back. But this is a way of using Blazor syntax, like the Razor syntax, to build truly native apps. Native apps that are on iOS, Android, Windows, and so on. So this is where things started. And then we got to the .NET MAUI stuff with WebViews. Let's talk about that. Right, so we can close that off. Let's talk about .NET MAUI now. Like I said, this is an iteration or an evolution of Xamarin.Forms. This is the docs site, which they've been really working hard on. So most things are moved over from Xamarin.Forms, and they've added a whole bunch of desktop-friendly things. And it's nice. It's a nice way to kind of get started. So let's look into some .NET MAUI stuff. So just for pointers here, let's see, this is big enough. So just so you know, I am running I'm running .NET 6, right? Version 3.0, that's the SDK version. And if I do a .NET, I think it's list and SDKs, I have .NET 3.1, 5, 6, 7. I don't have the 7 ones yet. This is nice because .NET is just a folder. I can blow it away. I can re-get it. I can bundle .NET with my apps. It's really nice. So let's go over to a place where I keep all my stuff, and let's look at some of these projects. Let's begin with, let's do MAUI Blazor Dev. If I can type. These are all live demos, by the way. They can all fail anytime, and then you can all laugh at me. But that's all right. We're going to have a little fun. So I do have VS Code on my path, so I can do code dot. And let's do an iOS build. And let's see if it can remember. There you go. So we're doing a .NET build, but we are specifying a target framework to say, go run this on iOS. This is a multi-targeted project. So we're going to spin this up, and in the meantime, I'm going to show you what it's actually doing. So this is what a .NET MAUI project looks like. And now the simulator is really fast. So let's bump things up a little bit. OK, so this is the .NET MAUI project, as compared to a Xamarin.Forms project or other ones that we saw. Here, you don't have 5 different projects for each of the platforms that you're supporting. This is exactly what was painful in Xamarin.Forms. Now it's truly a single project, and it's an SDK-style project. So if you look at the CS proj, it's nice and clean. They're going to clean up this more, but there are some target frameworks here, and there are some folders here. Every platform that you see is essentially a folder. It's not a different project, so your NuGet dependencies are just in one place. And it tries to help you out a little bit. So you see these like resources here. The fonts, the images, the splash screens, the icons, they are all shared now, right? Which is real nice, because like all of these platforms have different specs. They will do the resizing. They will handle SVGs and let you, keep things in one place if you want. And then if you want that customization, you can at any point drop into that native folder and do stuff. But your app icons, splash screens, they all remain right here. Now let's take a look at what's happening in MAUI program.cs. This is where the app bootstraps. As compared to Xamarin.Forms, now it uses what Blazor uses, which is the .NET generic host. Your dependency injections go right here, which is nice. And the only thing it's adding here is MAUI Blazor WebView. This is the magic that holds it all together. It's essentially a .NET MAUI shell, a true native mobile or a desktop app, but we are sticking in a WebView in here. And this is a smart abstraction, because it knows what platform you're running on. If you do this on Android, it gives you the corresponding web view. Every platform has an any questions or no? We're good. Okay, every platform has a browser. It just grabs the corresponding browser. If I run this on a Mac, it's going to give me WK WebView, which is the Mac thing. On Windows, it's WebView 2, right? So it's really nice and smart. So it's registering that, and that's all it needs. And then you come look at main page.xaml. And if you hate XAML, this is all the XAML that you ever have to see, because all it's doing is creating a content page and saying, let's get you a web view. And beyond that, it's entirely a web app, right? So you have your web view, and it's pointing to like the root component of your Blazor app, and that's all. That's all the XAML you want to see. The entire app canvas is web, right? It's a web view, so everything is welcome. So with that, we can launch this, and I fired off the iOS build, which is running. So let's go look at the simulator. Yeah, the same exact Hello World app that we saw on Electron, the same exact app now works here. Now, there's one more fun thing. Since this is a web view, you might have questions about, is it a stable canvas? Yes, you're a little bit dependent on the user to have a modern, greenfield evergreen browser, but it comes with some benefits, right? So I can pull up Safari. So what is the one thing that web developers swear by? No matter how or what tools you're using, what frameworks you're using, it's dev tools, right? You want to be able to see what's going on and tinker with stuff. You can. So I can go into my iPad Air, and right there is my Blazor Web Dev 000. I come back up here. You see that? That's Chrome DevTools or Safari DevTools, letting you tinker with your Blazor app that's running natively on a mobile device or a desktop, right? So I can go in here, counter. This is really small, and now it's too big. So come down here. That's the div tag, which renders the whole UI. Eventually, you're going to see somewhere, not there, main div, article, somewhere. There's the button, right? So you can tinker with CSS and JavaScript and all the things you want from your dev tools inside of a native app, which is pretty nice, okay? All right, so let's look at more examples. So let's bail out of this and clear. Let's close this. Let's look at MAUI Blazor, I think is what I had it. No. Oh, it does actually work without the dot, which is nice. All right. Let's minimize things a little bit so I can see better. All right, so this is, again, same MAUI Blazor project, but I have a few more things in here. And I don't think it's pulled up the right thing, so hold on. I wanted to look at the other folder. Yeah, this is the folder I wanted to look at. Okay, so let's run this now on Mac, just to show you a difference here. And while it's doing that, we are going to look at some backend as well. Just a little bit of the API stuff that I promised. So let's go back here, and let's look at this thing called minimal APIs. We're going to bring that up. And this is the new minimal API in .NET 6 and .NET 7. It is super simple. CSproj is super simple. It just says, hey, I run on .NET 6, and implicit usings are enabled, which means go ahead and use C#10 things. So all of your using things are nice and clean. You don't have to have it on every file. And you have global usings. You have file scoped namespaces. So you can just start your code just like that without any usings. So this is like the 3 lines that you need to spin up an API. It's a web application that we're creating. And then we can just add Swagger, add Razor pages, add other things, and then you just do app.run, and that's it. So what it's doing here is just some mapping. This is the same as web APIs, the CRUD, create, read, update, delete. They're all there, but it just gets you started a little easier, right? So hello world and all those things are here. Person is a record, and we're returning, what person are we returning? Elon Musk, because he's been in the news of late, right? So we can go in here, and let's just do a .NET run. So you should see the API come back, and it's saying, hey, I'm running on localhost 7197. So let's go there, and that's my hello world, and let's hit that person endpoint. I get Elon Musk back. Oh, and by the way, this is so nice if you work with APIs. I'm a big fan of Swagger, because now you can visualize your APIs, all of your get, post, put, delete, everything is right there, so you can play around, hand it off to your team members to tinker with your API. So let's keep that up, but now let's actually go back and run the Blazor app that we were looking to run. Here, we're going to actually choose Mac Catalyst as a runtime, so I can show you a few more things. Maybe, if it remembers. No, that's still iOS. Oh, this is too much. I do have a cheat sheet right here. You see that? This is my $1 million cheat sheet of all the builds and all the commands that I run. Anyways, so let's close that. And now we're going to do a build on Mac Catalyst. So we are taking a MAUI Blazor app, running it on Mac, which should be similar to what we saw with Electron, except this is done very differently. There is no Node.js. This is purely a .NET app. There is a WebView that we are putting this in. And if I go in here to this API stack, I can hit that same endpoint that I just did from my web app or my browser. I get Elon Musk back, right? And this is nice. So one other thing I wanted to show you, maybe as just a fun demo here, is I have a little backend here, which is hosted on Azure. It's a simple real-time Hello World app that lets you broadcast things from a server, and it just broadcasts to everybody. So I can come in here, and I can say web says hi, and send. It's right there, and I can keep doing that. It's real time. And I can go to my Blazor application here, go to the chat room, and I can say Mac says hello, and send. So you see how quick this is, because it's real time. This view is actually using just straight up Blazor and .NET code to talk to it. And I can do this from JavaScript, and we'll keep the back end up, and I can show this to you from Windows or iOS or Android. It's real nice. So that's Blazor and MAUI together in a nutshell. And if I show you the code here, there are a couple of things interesting about this. Let's close this. Let's look at the MAUI project. So what are we doing here? First up is I still have the Blazor web view, and here's my API.razor. That's the view that showed you, the JSON coming back. I'm straight away making a call to localhost. Now, don't exactly do this. I'm doing like a thing called markup string. So I'm hitting an endpoint, grabbing some JSON, and just putting it out as HTML, which has like security concerns, but just to show off. But this thing is interesting because this is localhost. And I ran this as a desktop application, and it was fine. But if I try running this on iOS or Android, it will complain that those are different VMs. Those simulators are not local. They don't know what localhost is, right? So just a little nuance that it is truly a native desktop application. And here's the chat room, and this is all Razor code. Watch how I'm bringing in signalr.client. This is all div tags in here, and then here's some C# code behind. I'm making a connection out to my backend, and I'm subscribing to the on method so I can receive messages, and when I hit the button, it actually takes the username and the message and just calls the send async method, which is on the server, so it just works. So this is all .NET code, and I can do this from JavaScript as well. Okay, so this is just in a nutshell, just MAUI or Blazor working inside of .NET MAUI. Now you might have some questions. It's good to have a web view so you can do Blazor stuff, but how about some native stuff? Can I do native things with Blazor? And the answer is yes. Yes, very much yes. Mike says nice work. Someone's paying attention and looking at my little URL. It's a tiny Azure thing. It's going to die. Star Trek says great demo. Thank you. Somebody actually did like a SQL injection attack, which is hilarious. It doesn't do anything. It's just a SignalR hub. It's just like relaying messages back and forth. Okay. So let's go look at some more stuff here. And I think it's called MAUI Native Blazor. All right. And by the way, .NET MAUI stuff now works on VS for Mac, so you don't have to keep doing what I'm doing with command line. Debugging is also now enabled. Okay, now this is the same exact Blazor app. I have all of my pages. So my point is, if you have a team of folks in your company that are doing a Blazor application, you can just copy over those files and just drop them into .NET MAUI and start enabling this. You can actually link these files and have it shared between multiple projects. So let the Blazor folks do the Blazor stuff on the web. You can just borrow and benefit from what they're doing and just like do it on desktop or mobile. So here is index.razor, pure Blazor stuff, right? And what we want to do here is show some native stuff. So I have a button here. When you click on it, we want to show you the app name. We want to show you some device orientation, like what's the device width and height like, and most importantly, what network access does the device have? Like, are you on a plane or 3G, 4G, 5G, 6G, whatever. We don't want to go to the 5G thing that has like political connotations, but you get the idea. So this used to be something we used to do with something called MAUI Essentials. This was one library which got you access to all like the 40 or so native APIs. Now, this was a breaking change a couple of weeks back. It is so important that it's not there anymore. It's kind of like the it's like the Matrix thing of bending the spoon. There is no spoon because now this is just built in. So what they did was broke it off into multiple namespaces. So instead of just one thing that got you everything, now there's an application model, there's a devices, there's a networking. So my obvious question was, I don't want to keep writing this code over and over again. And they said, yes, you can. You don't have to. You can do all of this in a global usings file, so all of your stuff stays together. And turns out you actually don't even have to do this, because if I do a search here on global, you can see that somewhere here, let's see, what file is this? This is the global usings file that's generated as interrupt code before it gets compiled into native things on iOS or Android. They are dropping all the global usings right there. So you don't have to worry about it. All of the APIs are right there. And when they're bundling up the app, they are doing some tree shaking to make sure they're not giving your app anything more than what you're using. So this is nice. Okay, so let's actually run this real quick. Now, keep in mind, I'm reading a couple of things here from my device. So what we want to do is run this on iOS. Now, when we say, let's find the iOS build real quick. There you go. Now, we are welcoming web developers to be native developers. And what we essentially mean by that is welcome to our pain, our world of hell as native developers. So now you can deal with all the things that we have to deal with. So here's the app running on an iPad, which is the default simulator, but you can actually change up and run it on iOS. So same Blazor app, right? But now I can hit that button and it says, hey, your app name is that. You are running on portrait mode on that resolution, and you happen to be on Wi-Fi, right? So I have this just wired up on the button click, so it won't naturally do it. But if I go back here and hit that again, now it says, hey, you are on landscape. So I am reading all the things about the device while I'm running this as a Blazor application. Now, there is more to it. What if you wanted to access the camera or geolocation, all from Blazor code? You don't want to touch any .NET stuff or write any XAML. That's fine too. So if I go to fetch data, you get the classic weather thing, but it's kind of fake. It's just giving you some weather data that's fake. How long do I have? I have till 4:30. Okay, 18 minutes more. All right, that should be good. Okay, so if I go to my fetch data here, you see this wonderful little thing come up? That is iOS saying, hey, this app is wanting to read your location. Is that okay? And you can say yes or no. Allow once, and out comes the lat long. I'm being lazy. I'm not actually making a weather call, but once you have your lat long, you can, right? Then let's look at the counter thing here. This is the same counter, the Blazor thing that works. If I do this read and write from storage, you will see that if I do a read from storage, it says, hey, I'm trying to write to file, but there is nothing on that key value pair, so I'm just going to give you default value. But I can write to storage, and this is a timestamp, so this is like 1612, right? So if I go back here, come back to the counter, and read, now I get 1612. And I write again, now it's 1647, and I read it's 1640. So I'm just reading and writing from disk, which is nice. Now, what if I wanted like media or photo gallery access or camera access? It's all the same API. So I can do a pick, and then out comes the iOS or the Android photo picker, and these are some native things that are default pictures that are built in. I can tap on that, and out comes the image. So what's going on there? Let's take a look. So this is pure Blazor code. So here is where's my fetch? So here's my fetch, and I don't need to have that sensors anymore. That namespace is built in. All I can do is geolocation, get last known. That's all. That's going to give me the lat long, which is nice. But now you have to worry because you are native. You have to ask for permissions. So there's this wonderful little thing called info.plist on iOS. Android has their what's it called? The Android activity. Same idea, permission. So you have to ask for permission from the user. Don't say that you're going to track them or stalk them, but you have to declare all the things. So this is the location when in use. This is the photo gallery access. This is the camera access. So they're all in there. So you need that before you can ask for geolocation. Now let's look at the counter thing real quick. When I tried writing to disk, this is all I did. There's a preferences thing, which is essentially an object, and I have full file system access. I don't care how it does it on iOS, Android, Windows, or Mac. I just give it a key and a value, and the value could be a flattened JSON file or whatever it is, like a POCO object. Flatten it out, it's going to deserialize and write to disk. You don't need to care about how or where, it just works. And I can read that back. This is the get, and this is the write. And here's the, excuse me, here's the photo picking thing. Just one line of code, media picker. Now take a look at this code here. When I display the image, this is all Blazor. This is just an image tag, a literal HTML image tag that I'm bringing back an image from iOS or from Android and trying to show you. Because what it fires off is a request to the OS, and then eventually once you pick, you get to have a file path. And that's what you can give it to your image, and then it works, right? Now, there are more things to this once you start doing native things. There is info plist, and then there is this thing called entitles, which is essentially what it sounds like, entitlements. So these are extra elevated things from Apple. Like if your app has to do stuff on iCloud or tap into Siri or all the other Apple services, you have to declare. So while this is good, this preferences thing, it's essentially writing it to a flat file, which is sandboxed within your app. If you would rather have it encrypted and it's really sensitive data, then you should write it to secure storage. And secure storage on iOS essentially means keychain, right? iOS or Mac. So you have to declare that, and this is where you get into the hell of going to the Apple developer account, making sure you have your provisioning profile and certificates all lined up, and then it'll start working. Yes, quick question in the back.
How long do preferences last?
Like the file that you're writing?
Yeah.
it's with your app. So as long as your app is running, you will have your preferences. Yeah, and you can write whatever you want to it. And I'm sure there are like size limitations, but it's pretty big. It's whatever your app needs. So all of the native things work. You just need to know what you're doing with Blazor, but they all work from Blazor. Now let's see, 14 minutes left. Okay, let's switch gears a little bit. Because all the .NET stuff is nice, and you're maybe considering some possibilities, but you realize that you also have JavaScript dependencies and JavaScript apps that you're making for the web. What happens to those? Well, they're kind of welcome. Whoops. Let's go to this thing called MAUI Angular. Can I go up? There we go. And while it's coming up, I am going to go ahead and run this on, let's do desktop. So as the name suggests, as you may have guessed, I'm trying to combine .NET MAUI with Angular. And if you have done any Angular dev, this will look familiar. This is just Angular CLI. So it's the same thing as doing an ng new and then an ng serve. You get the CLI and everything in here works. Except now this is just wrapped up in a nice pretty shell and it's running on desktop, right? How is this working? Well, it's not rocket science. It's pretty simple, actually. So if I go over here to my command line projects here, that is the app, Angular CLI. And if I do an ng build, where I'm building up my Angular application, I can put it on whichever folder. This is distribution. And I go into that. This is a folder that's now ready for deployment. I can take this to Azure or AWS or wherever. This is all flattened and compiled. It's ready for deployment. We can take all of this and just drop it in my .NET MAUI app, right? Which is exactly what I've done here. So let's go in here. This is the same .NET MAUI Blazor application, right? I still have my web view, but I have actually turned off this line of code because I do not want it to go find the Blazor root component because I don't have Blazor. Instead, if I look at the Blazor index.html, this is what Blazor likes to do. This is the Blazor startup thing. Instead, I actually wanted to use the index.html that is coming from my Angular app, which is right here. So all of your dependencies, all of your polyfills, and whatever else Angular needs to run, it's all right there. So when you run it, what I'm trying to say is the Blazor web view is a nice abstraction. It does not care what you give it, right? Any web content, HTML, CSS, JavaScript, as long as it's there, it's happy to render, right? Now, just to prove, let's go back here. Let's do one more, and we're going to do MAUI React and do the same Mac Catalyst build. So I've done the exact same thing. I've taken a full-on React application, taken the files, dropped it in .NET MAUI, and now I have React running on desktop, right? Is this nice? Kind of, right? Maybe I'm overselling it. It's not actually so nice. I'll show you why. Because if you look at Blazor and this stuff, there's a huge difference. Blazor runs on .NET 6. They don't. There's a huge wall in between, JavaScript and .NET. They don't talk to each other. I mean, you could write Angular code which taps into the camera of your phone, but it's not going to be pretty code because you are going across the interop. You have to flatten all the files and package up method call, punt it over the wall, and hopefully the other person catches it on the other side, right? So it's there as an option. If you really, really have a customer that says, I have a web app that I really want to see on desktop, you take a deep breath and you say, it's going to cost you $1 million. You sit on it for a few weeks, you bundle it inside of .NET MAUI and ship it, right? That's what you do. Okay, now let's look at 10 minutes. Okay, before I get kicked out. Let's look at Windows, and this is where the lights are supposed to flicker because I'm in a VM. I do have Windows towers in my office, but they don't move with me, and it's a pain to remote into. So I do have a VM here. This is the same Blazor application that we saw, just running on Windows. Same exact idea, Blazor web view. Here's my Blazor chat. Let's go ahead and run this right there. So same exact .NET MAUI app, now it runs on Windows, except this one does a few more things. You notice this hello world wasn't there. So here, it's not all web. So I can mix and match a little bit of native stuff with some web stuff. So you see that counter thing? I can increment that counter here, and I can go to the counter. The counter is actually being driven by a Blazor component, which is nice. So I can update native things from a Blazor code. And here's the code that does it, because this is the stack layout, which is native. The label and the button are native, but everything inside of this is Blazor, right? So you get the idea. Now, what other native things can you do? And this is code I stole from, actually, hold on, before we go there. Chat room, is this working? Blazor on Windows says, hi, send. Oh, it does. You folks have not crashed it yet. There, right there, you see that? So now the same backend, I can talk to it from iOS, Android, Windows, and Mac, which is real nice. But the real nice thing here is this button that says go and do something native. There's a gentleman named Elon Lipton on the .NET team, veteran. Actually, Blazor mobile bindings was kind of his idea, and then the .NET team ran with it. This is code that he wrote, and it's hilarious because you're taking in, this is index.razor, we have system.io we are bringing in. On that button click, I have an H3 where I want to bring back a message, but I want to start up a new temporary file, give it a name, open it up with system diagnostics, notepad, close it, read the stream, back in Blazor, right? So let's do that. So I can do that. Notepad comes up. We can say, hello, Star Trek, and save it and close it. We get hello, Star Trek right back, right? So in just those 4 lines of code, what you see is we are going off from our web sandbox. This is truly a desktop application. The world is your oyster. There is nothing stopping you from going across processes, tapping into Windows services or Mac things, whatever you need. This is truly a native desktop app. It's just rendering the web stuff inside of a web view. Now, while this is nice, you may not want to recreate all of your desktop applications with this, and which is fine. You can take baby steps into this. So let's show you a few more things here. I'm going to do this one here, 8 minutes. It's Friday for Visual Studio as well, but so far it's good. So this one here is actually a WPF application, right? I am not doing a .NET MAUI app, but I can take a shortcut because I can borrow the exact same web view that MAUI renders, and that is called WebView 2. So this is essentially just a reference here. Right there is my WebView 2 for WPF, and I can do this on WinForms as well. All I'm doing here is pointing it to a URL. So when I run this, you know exactly what to expect. It's going to be a WPF app, but everything inside of it, if my tethering is working, yeah, you see that? That's a website. So this may be the dirtiest hack you do, but you can just render your entire website inside of a WPF or a WinForms app, because why not? Now, this is not very practical, though. What if you actually wanted to build Blazor stuff inside of desktop applications? You could as well. So let's look at, which one? This one here. So this one is still a WPF app, but we are actually using the web view here, and we are actually rendering some Blazor components. I'm pointing it to a root component and the counter. This counter component is sitting right here in my Blazor, in my WPF project. It is a Blazor component that I'm dropping. I don't have any CSS, nothing else Blazor. I'm just dropping a component. And when I run this, it's going to look like a desktop application because it has no styling. If I didn't tell you, you would not know that this little counter is a Blazor component, right? So they can all happily coexist, and you can do very native things from Blazor is all that I'm trying to say. Now, let's look at 6 minutes left. I want to keep like maybe 1 or 2 minutes to have some Q&A, but a few other questions here. What if you have existing components that you've built with Angular, with Blazor, or anything else? Do they work? And the answer is yes, because the web view, again, does not care. This is a .NET MAUI solution, and again, I'm not trying to show you our UI, just the fact that it works, and this will work on any component that you might have. This one here, essentially, if you look at the platform dependencies, and hold on, the dependencies are broken down per platform. So let's look at Windows here. In here, if I look at the NuGet packages, there is a tiny package here called Telerik UI for Blazor. This is our web stuff, our Blazor controls now being rendered on desktop. So all I'm doing here is just a barcode. So let's go ahead and run this. It's a native app with web components, and anything you have custom, in-house built, anything from us, everything is welcome now on desktop, which is nice, if Visual Studio will finish up building. And while it's doing that, let me show you a GitHub repo. Where was that? 5 minutes. This one here. So, I don't want to do that now. Okay, there you go. So we have taken almost all of our Blazor UI, grids and charts and all the heavy things that we do for web apps. Now they're on .NET MAUI. Now they're on WPF and WinForms. So what I'm trying to say is, it's kind of like the rent control situation where no one's happy. Give your tenants something new, like new carpet, maybe as a runtime. Give them a little new kitchen island, like a little island that renders Blazor. So something new to keep your developers engaged and happy and moving your WPF and WinForms apps to the new world. So here, this app finally came out. That's a barcode. So that's a web component rendering just fine on desktop. Okay, makes sense? Somewhat? Okay, any questions here from the room? Are we good? Okay, so let's see, what other things I was going to show you? Oh, question, okay, let's do a question.
What do you look at a site's content security policy to block hosting?
That's a good question. The question is, are there security concerns? Are there cross-scripting things? Yes, so, and actually I had a thing I had bookmarked to show you. So when you are, no question, okay. So when you are doing things inside of a web view, you have the same exact concerns that you will have if you're rendering that kind of cross-scripting stuff on the web. The same things apply here. Yes, there are security things, but keep in mind you are inside of a sandbox. Now, yes, you do have access to all of the native things, but you're going to have the user be the barrier between allowing things natively on their iOS or Android or Windows or desktop, right? And if you are navigating things, I wanted to show you some methods that are available to you. While your app is running inside of WebView 2, you actually do get some notifications of things that are happening inside of the WebView. Let's see if I can find the docs here. So while your app is running, Blazor, Angular, whatever, you do get some notifications, especially as the user is navigating back and forth. And what is nice here is if I go back to .NET MAUI and maybe look at some user interface, some controls, and some layouts, overview. So these are the ways in which we native developers do layouts. So there are different types of ways to create a page. Could be a tabbed page, could be a master detail page and all that. And within each page you have these layouts. And every one of these containers can now happily take in a Blazor web view. So could be just a chunk or a small renderer part of or one component of your web app that you want to use in native, you can do that. So you can mix and match XAML and WebViews if you know what you're doing. So it's all possible. Yes, this is new. Yes, there might be some security things you have to be conscious of, but it is all very possible. Make sense? Okay, 4:29. I really should stop here. So let me stop. So hopefully you see that the world is your oyster, and you have all the tools to do this. I am sorry if this is jumping through a few things, but I tried to show you the promise, and hopefully some of it applies to what you're doing. This is again me, so we can keep chatting anytime after this. But any questions? First, let's do Slack. Anything from Slack? From the other rooms? Okay, we're good. Any questions here from the room? Yes, sir.
Are these samples going to be available anywhere?
Yeah. So most of them are rather basic, but GitHub and then my name. So I'll try to, most of them are up. If not, I'll put them up. Okay, so thank you so much for spending an hour with me. Hopefully this was a happy day for you. Let's go watch a movie, and hopefully there are some ideas that you can take back to work. And thank you so very much. Enjoy the rest of your evening, folks. Okay, thank you.